Welcome to the bye week.
Yeah, but the podcasts never stop.
Yeah, we promised you guys we'd give you pods, and here we are. We're doing
They
it.
could cancel the NFL, and we would still do podcasts.
Make it a little tough.
We'd find a way.
Yeah, I always think about that when a team leaves a city and people were covering that team. That's got to be weird, huh?
That's got to be tough. I was thinking about that. You know, you cover the Raiders all your life. Well, they kind of moved around a lot too, but you cover the Raiders or the Browns, and all of a sudden there's no team to cover. That's got to be rough.
Yeah, I know John McClain.
The Eagles almost moved. I mean, the Eagles almost moved back when Leonard Tost owned the team.
What would you have done?
I guess I'd still be covering high school basketball and track and enjoying it. But
all right, this is the Eagle Eye Podcast.
There'd be no Eagle Eye Podcast. There'd be no Eagles. I mean, it's crazy to think about. It wasn't that far-fetched. We could do a whole podcast on that during the off season. What if the Eagles
Sounds
moved?
Good.
Yeah.
I like that. Let me do the open here. This is Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. He's Ruben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We do have a lot to talk about. We learned some news about the Dallas Goedert injury. We didn't know about it. Exactly what happened on the post-game pod. We want to talk about the secondary a little bit. It's been shaky through the last few weeks, but some reasons why it might get better down the stretch here. We'll get into some big picture topics with the Eagles sitting at 8-1 on their bye, and then we have some mid-season awards to give out. Really high honors. The Eagles players will be very excited to get some of those.
Might be some bonuses in their contracts for these.
I think so. Yeah, definitely incentive-laden contracts with our pleasant surprise at the midway point.
Backside protection. They so-called incentives backside protection. That's what
I don't know.
Because the incentives on the old contracts that were on paper used to be on the back. So they were called backside protection. And
I thought you meant it was protecting your backside in case the money dried up.
No, it was literally on the backside of the contract. But now it's all digital. So I don't know if they still call it that. So
they do another sign it. Podcast. I mean, it's not just digital. They sign contracts.
I think it's just for show. I think it's all digital. It's just for TV ops.
No, I think they legally have to sign that stuff.
Maybe. I think it's the auto sign thing that you just hit, Anyway.
I don't like that.
It's progress.
Dallas Goedert. I guess this is kind of good and bad news. It's bad news because fractured forearm is the news on him, but it sounds like it's not a season ender, which that's the good news part of this. And it's kind of similar to what the Eagles went through last year with Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Like you said last night on the pod after the game, I mean, there's not many positions where the drop-off from starter to backup is this extreme. It's not a position that they have another. I mean, Stoll's a really good blocker. He doesn't really catch the ball. Calcaterra, he's a young kid who's fast. And he's got maybe one or two catches. He had the one big catch early last year, but they don't have anybody. I mean, not many teams have anybody that can do what Dallas Goedert does, catching the ball, being physical with the ball in his hands, running over safeties, and also being such a force on the line of scrimmage as a blocker. So it's a big loss. And, you hope with the bye and missing 4 games, if he goes on IR, you just miss him for 4 games and he has, 6 weeks to recover. That's the best case scenario at this point. But you do get him back most likely for the stretch run for the playoffs, and that'll be huge. But there's nobody to go in and do what he does or anything close to it.
Yeah, we should mention NFL Network. I believe they were the first ones to report the fracture and also the timeline for the recovery, which is a big deal here. We saw the Eagles without – it's funny, last year in the 5 games without him, they went 5-0, but I wouldn't look at that and expect them to just be fine without him again this year because they had everyone playing at a really high level last year. The schedule was not as tough during the games he missed. Right. So it's still a big loss. What do you think they do? Is it just Jack Stoll next man up?
Yeah, knowing the way Nick thinks, I mean, he's more inclined to have a blocker in there than maybe Alberto, who can catch the ball but doesn't give you anything on the line of scrimmage. I would expect that's the way they would go. Maybe there'll be some packages for Alberto, and he can catch the ball. At least he has in the past. So he hasn't really played. He played a few snaps, I think, Sunday, right? He got in
6
snaps. I think that's the plan. And,
he's still
Jack
behind
Stoll,
Grant Calcaterra.
I'm sorry.
He's still behind Grant Calcaterra.
Yeah, and assuming Grant Calcaterra does come back and play, which you would think he'd be okay. Although, Nick has talked about really being careful with him, and we'll see. Obviously has a history of concussions, but you would think by the Chiefs game he'd be fine.
I would think so. I saw him last night when I was leaving the stadium. He was there with his family. He was at the game. He practiced in a limited fashion on Friday, so he's moving through the protocol.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Still a concern, obviously, but I think Jack Stoll makes the most sense. And even if he just catches a couple 6-yard passes, which he can do, he'll catch a couple balls. He doesn't get targeted very often, obviously. Why would you with all the other weapons on this team? But, I think it's just going to be a little more Devontae, a little more AJ, a little more thrown to the backs, which they've shown an inclination to do more this year than any time in the past. And just try to get to whenever Dallas gets back, and just try to get there intact, because there is no easy fix for this.
Yeah, I think this would be a really nice time for a third receiver to step up a little bit.
And Julio's the guy, I think.
Well, I don't know. He's still getting out snapped by Olamide Zaccheaus. I know Julio just got here a few weeks ago. I think they're still going to limit his snaps a little bit. I don't know what they're going to do with Quez. He's eligible to come back after the bye.
Right.
He's been working on a side field. Maybe he's an option. I don't know, but it's one of those guys. If they get one of those receivers to be a legitimate third option, at least in the interim, I think that's what you would want. I don't think it's going to be Jack Stoll. I just don't think that's really in his bag.
Right.
And because Goedert's injury doesn't appear to be a season ender, I've had people ask me about, like, can they go sign someone? What about Gronk? Is he around? If Goedert's coming back, you don't do that, I don't think.
You have Brent Selleck in the building. But, yeah, I agree. And as for Quez, and we're a little off topic, but I just have this feeling he's not going to play. I don't know what they're going to do with him. Obviously, when he's healthy, they've got to do something, either cut him, shut him down for the year, put him on a practice squad. I think that might be a viable option at this point. Nobody's going to sign him. If they do,
we're in a little bit of a roster crunch because they have 6 receivers on the roster now, because Covey's on the roster and Julio Jones is on the roster.
Yeah, I just don't see Quez being on the 53 the rest of the year. That's that, and we'll see. Like, Nick's talked glowingly about him since OTA, so we'll see how they really feel about him when the time comes to either. I would assume they'd open this practice window and then, buy some time. They could buy 3 weeks doing that, but I just don't see Quez Watkins helping this team. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. It's got to be one of those guys. And I've had questions about, can Julio kind of become a tight end? He's not going to be a tight end on the line of scrimmage. Are there opportunities for him to catch balls in the slot? Sure.
Yeah.
But, he's not going to be a tight end in year 12, 13 of his Hall of Fame receiver career. Like, that's not going to happen. So
yeah, he can run some of the routes, but yeah, as far as Dallas's. And the one other concerning thing is, they struggled running the ball with Dallas, and he's such a big part of their running game. When it's cooking, you wonder, what that's going to look like without him.
Yeah, and it takes away the opportunity to give your 12 personnel. Sometimes the run game, if it's really, we saw early in the year, Jack Stoll was playing a ton. The run game was cooking with 12 personnel. Now, if you go 2 tight ends, it's Jack Stoll and Grant Calcaterra, which is obviously a really big drop off because Stoll's probably not as good a run blocker as Goedert, and Calcaterra is not as good a run blocker as Stoll. So you're probably losing the advantage you had when you ran that package. Yeah,
no doubt. I would guess we're not going to see a ton of that moving forward. Look, they've got some weapons. I also think they're going to throw. I mean, you ask like who that third option is going to be. They really like Swift in the receiving game, and I think he's going to be, maybe not as far as yards, but as far as volume of catches, I think he might be the third guy over these next few weeks.
Yeah, especially like if they're looking to kind of fill that tight end screen element. You can throw screens to the running back, which this team hasn't been a great screen team in general, but it seems like their wide receiver screens don't always work out the way they want. Maybe that's because they're throwing the Quez so much, but you're right. I mean, some of that, and Swift should be good after the catch, so I see that element of it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I probably bore everybody talking about throwing to the back so much the last few years, but it's a weapon, and I think Gainwell and Swift are both pretty good with the ball in their hands in space. So
even Boston.
So is Boston, and hopefully, we don't know what Boston's going through, but man, obviously it's going to be pretty serious for him to miss a game. Hopefully, we see him back really soon.
Yeah, that'd be good. So we'll see how they get by without Dallas Goedert. Obviously, they're going to miss him. Back-to-back years now with kind of a weird injury. It kind of feels fluky.
Yeah.
He had the shoulder injury last year, a broken bone in his shoulder. This year, a broken forearm. Maybe we should send some milk to the NovaCare complex.
Could probably use a couple gallons. And it makes you think. You got to
drink milk. Are you a milk drinker? Do you drink milk?
I drink milk in the morning if I have cold cereal. I'm kind of a big shredded wheat guy.
Okay.
So yeah, I usually rock the 1%.
I'm not a milk guy.
I can't imagine having a glass of milk.
My mom will do that. My mom will go to like a diner and get dinner and like order a glass of milk. Seems very strange to me.
That is, there was when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I worked at this place up in New Hampshire, near Conway, New Hampshire. I spent the summer up there working at this retreat, and there was like a really tough biker bar up Route 16 called Slicks. I actually still have my T-shirt. It's the oldest piece of clothing I own. I have my T-shirt from Slicks, but it was like, it was like something out of a movie. Just this I can't say the word blank kicker type of bar. So we were in there one night. I think the drinking age in New Hampshire that back then was like 9, and so we're in there, and I bet my friend, one of the other guys I worked with, would he go up to the bar, like saunter up to the bar, slam his fist down on the bar, and go, milk. And he did it. And he got a glass of milk, and nobody gave him a hard time. And that was, yeah. He just goes.
I like that story.
He just saunters up to the bar, smacks his fist down on the bar. Milk.
That's good.
Anyway.
Speaking of milk, let's talk milk check a little bit. Reed Blankenship, he's had a weird couple of weeks here.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't played well, but when the Eagles need him to make a play, he makes a play.
That's exactly it. And it's been really interesting. I think I think you learn about a guy by how he responds to adversity and how when things aren't going well. And they certainly haven't the last couple of weeks for Reed, but he had the interception in the Washington game. And then that incredible play down at the goal line, keeping the tight end named Luke something out of the end zone. We all thought it was a touchdown, and you watch that replay. And, the one thing about Reed is, I mean, he's we think of him as one of the veterans on the team. I mean, he started 11 games in his career. I mean, he wasn't a starter last year, other than when CJ was hurt. And I've just been really impressed with his resilience, with his confidence, with his ability to put bad things. Look, Sam Howell had an incredible game. He had a career game, and Dak is as accurate as anybody in those mid-range balls that are going to challenge the safety as anyone in the league. So, look, things aren't going to come easy, and you're going to give up plays, and it might happen over and over. And BG talked about this post game, and nobody has better perspective on big picture than BG. And he said, I tell these guys, just keep playing, just put it out of your mind, and whatever happened, it's over with. And all you can do is focus on that next play. And Reed has shown that rare ability to be able to do that. He's really physical. He's really smart. He knows where the ball's going. Look, he's not a super fast guy. He makes up for that by his knowledge of the defense and his intelligence. And he's shown that in crunch time in 2 straight games.
What do you make of the secondary in general? I think there are reasons to be a little concerned about what we've seen the last few weeks. Now, you can say Reed's probably going to keep getting better. We can think that maybe Byard, once he really gets more comfortable in this defense, will look better, but he hasn't looked good these first 2 games. The nickel spot, you can say, all right, well, Bradley Roby's going to come back, but we don't really know how well he's going to play. I think Slay has been fine, but Bradbury hasn't. So I think there are some reasons to be a little worried about this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think, I don't worry about guys like Sidney and Eli Ricks. These are young kids that are playing when they probably shouldn't be. They're playing in basically emergencies because of all the injuries. And they've both done some good things, and they certainly both had some very rough moments. But I think once they get settled, I think that'll help, and have 5 guys who can go out there week after week and develop that chemistry and that cohesion. But you're right. I mean, the guys I worry about are the veteran guys like Roby and Bradbury. I mean, they're the 2 guys who concern me the most, because when they do settle on those 5 guys, they're going to be in that group, and they both have to play better. And certainly with I think I said Roby, I meant Byard. You still, I guess you give them the bye week to the Byard week to really get into the playbook.
His second bye week, by the way.
What's that?
His second bye week.
It is. But yeah, he's a concern. To me, Bradbury's the biggest concern, because he doesn't look like the same player as last year. And, even on that fourth down stop with like a minute and a half left on the second to last drive, I mean, he could have easily gotten called for a penalty there. The way they're
waiting to see the yellow.
The way they're throwing flags around the NFL, I mean, I was kind of surprised they didn't. And I mean, it was worse than what he did in the Super Bowl. If they had the same refs, they might have won that game. Who knows? But yeah, I think it's something they're going to have to address after the season in the draft. I think I mean, even if they were playing well, when you have, 3 corners who are in their 30s, I mean, it's something you have to think about. And we talked about it all summer. Like, they're playing with fire with all these older veteran D-backs. And there's a reason there aren't that many in the NFL. If you lose just a step or a half step as a corner, you can go from being elite to being mediocre. And I think that's happening with Bradbury.
Yeah, and it's, you hear like old corners, and the first thing you think is, oh, they're going to get hurt. But the other part of it is what you just said, is like if you lose a step and you're not the same guy, and it's not like Bradbury had a ton of speed to begin with.
Right.
He's been able to make up for it in his career because he's long and he's smart, and he plays everything the right way. But and that was the crazy thing. Like, last year, he didn't get beat over the top. It just didn't happen. Yeah. And we've seen that a few times already this year.
Yeah, and I think pressure might be part of it. They have been up and down with their pressure, especially early in games. Makes it tough for any cornerback. I mean, but I would say it's alarming the way he's playing. The drop off from last year is significant.
Yeah, and it's really kind of strange because I think there was probably more concern going into this year about Slay
Right.
because I think we had like maybe started to see a little bit of something toward the end of last year. I mean, he hasn't been perfect, but I think he's playing at a more consistent level right now than Bradbury.
Yeah, I would agree. Significantly better. And yeah, he's given up some plays, but he's also generally on, you look at the guys he's been on for the most part. But I like how physical he's been. I mean, I think he's really become a more physical player, which is, for a corner. And he's not a big guy, but for him to kind of add that to his toolbox this late in his career is impressive. And I wonder what went into that. Something we can talk to him about when we get back from the bye. But he's been fine. And he'll probably go to another Pro Bowl on reputation. He's got half their picks, 2 of their 4, giving up 19 touchdowns, and they have 4 interceptions, and they're 8-1. It's kind of crazy. He's probably been their most consistent defensive back, I guess.
Oh, I think absolutely. It maybe by default, but
yeah,
I mean,
probably by default. Although Mekhi Gardner's in his one game was Josiah Scott was pretty good in his one game, but yeah, and I really do think that all the moving pieces makes it tough for all of them. But the last couple of weeks has pretty much been the same guys, and they've been. After that Dolphins game, the secondary played so well against Tua, who at that point was the hottest quarterback in the league. And I thought they'd taken a big step. And then the last 2 weeks against Howell and Dak, I mean, it's been ugly.
Yeah, and you're watching the Dolphins going, oh, maybe they weren't what we thought they were.
Yeah, that too. How about the way that game ended? That was nuts.
Do you think one last question on the secondary? When Roby is healthy, and I think he was tweeting on Sunday night that he'll be ready after the bye week, which makes sense because that would be the 4th game in a row for him. So they didn't put him on IR. This was probably always the plan. Is it just as simple as he's now the nickel?
I think so. I don't know why he wouldn't be. But let's see how it goes. Like you said, we don't really know what he's all about at this point, but what are the options? I mean, you can keep running the Josiah Scotts and the Eli Ricks and the Sidney Browns out there and cast the thousands. I think they're up to 9 different slots they've used at some point since training camp.
And we've even seen Slay in there. Did you include Slay in that?
Yeah, he was the 9th.
Okay.
Avonte Maddox, it's such a shame he's always hurt because you see how valuable he is, and maybe we don't talk about him enough. That 2018 draft class is injury prone, isn't it? Those 2 former roommates.
Maybe in their house there wasn't enough, maybe they didn't have enough milk in that house they were living in.
Yeah, they should have gone up to Slicks.
What was wrong with that water in whatever town they were living in?
They were living in Philadelphia.
Were they?
Yeah. But it does show you, I mean, what they're going through in the slot right now shows you how solid Avonte is when he's healthy, but you just can't count on that. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves and sitting at 8-1, but I think the secondary is going to be a big topic of the offseason.
Yeah, it probably needs to be.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. We'll have some overview stuff, and we'll give out mid-season awards on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity chef Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations for Martorano's Prime on Open Table. All right, Rube, let's take a big picture look at this thing. Eagles are 8-1. They're sitting pretty right now. We've talked about this before the Dallas game. If they go 3-3 in this 6-game stretch, they're in a really good spot, and they start off with a win.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think if they go 3-2 in the next 5, it's going to be hard for anyone in the NFC to catch them. That gets them, assuming they sweep the Giants and beat the Cards, and by that point, I mean, who knows who's even going to be quarterbacking either of those teams? But if they take care of business these next 5 weeks, go 3-2, now you're sitting at 11-3, and if you sweep those last 3 games, you're 14-3 again. And I don't see anybody. Look, the only team that's got 2 losses is the Lions, and they have a loss in the conference. So even if they win out or not win out, but I mean, if they win out, they'll probably be the number 1 seed. But even if they have 1 loss and the Eagles get to 14-3, depending on who the Eagles lose to, and these tough games, you look at the Bills and Chiefs are AFC games, but that's huge when it comes to tiebreakers. Is that AFC NFC thing? And I just don't see the Lions. I think the Lions are good. I don't think they're a great team, and I just don't think anyone's going to catch the Eagles. Now they could go. Look, they could go 1-4 these next 5. I just don't see it though, and I really like where they are. And they just don't lose many games. It's such a simple thing. It's like this football team doesn't lose. I mean, they closed out 21 7-2. Then they had the meaningless last week where they didn't play the starters. 7-2 after the Roots Underground, then 14-3, and then 8-1. I mean, they're on. I think they've now tied the most wins in that many games in franchise history, because in 03 and 04 they had some 12 wins one year, 13 the next year. So they've won a lot of games in the past, but this is as dominating a stretch as you'll see from any team over 2.5 years, and they're not going away. I mean, you look at the roster, the GM, the quarterback, the coach, the staff. Everything's in place for a really sustained period of excellence, and I just don't see anybody catching them.
How about this year, though, specifically? Because they have not been signature wins. They've been wins, and you give them credit. What do you make of this, that we're in week 9 or through week 9, and there's still so many things to improve? And like, they're winning these games, but the ball bounces a different way, and a few of them, they could easily have 3 losses.
Yeah, there's no question. And the ball hasn't bounced that way. So I think there's something to be said for knowing how to win, knowing how to finish. I think if they don't play better over the next month and a half, they could definitely lose some games, especially with the pass defense. You start facing Mahomes and Josh Allen and Brock Purdy, although all those guys have had their issues lately, interestingly.
I don't know how I feel about you putting those 3 together.
Well, you don't think Purdy, I mean, that's who they face the next few weeks.
I know, but it's like, I mean, Mahomes and Allen and
Josh Allen, Josh Allen's been very inconsistent.
Yeah, but a good Josh Allen day is as good as anyone.
But yeah, a lot of bad days, a lot more than Jalen. And I think he's got the most interceptions in the NFL over the last 5 years. Not a lot of quarterbacks have really played that much in the last 5 years. Do you know Carson still has the 8th most touchdown passes in the NFL since 2017? Isn't that crazy?
I did not know that.
I thought that was really interesting. Just tells you how good he used to be. I don't see that. I don't see his total going up anytime soon. But the one thing about the Bills game is it's at home, but it's coming off a short week after a Monday night game and traveling home. They're going to get home Tuesday morning. But when you look at the games, I mean, the Chiefs have certainly not been as explosive. They don't have any wide receivers, so you quadruple Kelsey and challenge the rest of the guys to make a play. I mean, we've been saying for so long how tough this stretch is, but all those teams have more issues than the Eagles do. When you look at, I mean, the Niners lost 3 in a row. Are they going to bye this week? They didn't play. They don't play this weekend, right? The Bills have been really shaky. The Chiefs aren't scoring points like they used to. Seattle just got crushed in Baltimore. So I think it's going to come down to that second Dallas game. I think if they win that game, they're going to be the number one seed. I believe that everything else will fall into line. They'll win enough games that if they can handle business at AT&T Stadium where they've lost 5 in a row, they're going to be almost impossible to catch. Certainly by the Cowboys.
If they win 13, 14 games, Jalen Hurts the MVP.
He's definitely in the running. The way he's playing. Yeah, I mean, he's going to throw for 4,500 yards, assuming he plays all 17 games, and they don't need to, they might be able to rest him the last week or two. But yeah, he's going to throw for 28 or so. He's going to rush for like 28 or so. He's completing 68% of his passes. I mean, they're 8-1. They could be going to another Super Bowl. And it's not like Mahomes is having a great year. It's not like Josh Allen. You look at the other candidates, and Joe Burrow's having a big year. I mean, he's playing great now. He got off to a slow start. I don't know who would the other candidates be.
Yeah,
I mean,
have
AJ
the odds in front of me.
AJ would be a candidate, but it'll never be a receiver.
Yeah.
Who are the top guys?
Yeah, so Mahomes is plus 300. He's at the top. Hurts is plus 325, so he's right behind him. Then Lamar Jackson, and then it drops a little. He's playing.
Lamar Jackson's completing like 73% of his passes. He's another guy that's not just a runner. He's a really good passer. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, he's really good. That might be the best team in the AFC.
Or the NFL.
You have Mahomes, Hurts, Lamar, and then it drops off. Tua's at plus 650. And then Joe Burrow, who would be like a sneaky pick at this point because the Bengals tricked us all into not thinking they were good again.
Right.
Then Josh Allen, then Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott. It really drops off.
Who's the top non-quarterback on that list?
Christian McCaffrey. And yeah, Christian McCaffrey at plus 5,000, Tyreek Hill at plus 6,000. AJ is after them, plus 7,500.
Yeah, I mean, it'll never – I'm one of the voters, and I can't imagine a scenario where I would vote for I mean, AJ might have 2,000 yards, but who's getting him the ball?
Yeah, now if something happened and AJ did this with a different quarterback, maybe. Yeah,
I think so. And like, not to take anything away from him, he's been incredible. And I don't have any rules. I would vote for a running back or a safety or a wide receiver if I believed he was the best player in the league. But I don't know the last time a non-quarterback won that award. It's happened. It's happened in the past, but
I think McCaffrey is an interesting one because of how much he means to that offense. He does kind of everything. You see the difference when he's not out there.
Sure.
But yeah, it's the quarterback award.
Yeah. And I guess offensive player of the year is more like for non-quarterbacks. I think that's why they have the two different awards. But I'd have to say Jalen might be my favorite right now.
Right now?
So.
Which is so funny because early this year, how much of the talk was about he doesn't look right. He doesn't look like the 2022 version.
But through it all, we kept saying he's going to be fine. And I think we both believed that. He had a new coordinator, a new quarterbacks coach. And I think it's just really hard to have the season he had last year and then just week one, just all of a sudden play at that level. And he was above average, but he wasn't elite for those first couple games. But he really turned it on the last few weeks. I mean, he's been incredible, and it's probably the best 3-week stretch of his career, I would say. And he had some really good games last year, but I think he'll get it. I think he's going to be the MVP.
Wow. Well, that's a good segue. Should we get to our midseason awards? Because these are much more important than the actual end of the year awards. Who cares about who actually wins the MVP?
No.
You want to know who is the offensive and defensive MVP through 9 games on the Eagle Eye podcast. So let's start with the offensive MVP.
I would say AJ Brown.
I actually no. I'm going to make the case for AJ Brown because I think he's been more consistent through 9 games.
Yeah, I mean you can certainly make a case for him. I'll go Jalen on that one, but if we had, I mean, how do you? He's already over 1,000 yards just halfway through the season. I mean, it's we should have written our halfway through the season stories at halftime yesterday. I mean, we really messed up there. But yeah,
I was starting to write Jalen Hurts not ready to play a second half story that never saw the light of day. So I was a little busy.
Yeah, I had like a 700-word observation on Jalen's injury that ended up on the cutting room floor, as they say. If people only knew how many stories we wrote that never get read. I still have a story, with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, 1,000-word observations on that game. But anyway,
I have the Eagles drafting every player who's been drafted in the last 5 years.
We do. We have, if people only knew, we have every single first round pick we've written a story about.
At least like not a full story, but like bio stuff that we have ready to go.
Yeah. But yeah, so last year was good because there were 2 of them. So at least 2 of them got used. Look, he's going to have a historic season. I mean, I think the record's 1964. Look, we're in a 17-game season now. I get that. But the thing about AJ is he's averaging like 16 yards a catch. He's got a ton of catches. I mean, he's got 60 catches. So that's like he's got a high volume of catches and a high average, and that's really rare. He's going to, if he continues at his current pace, which he probably won't just because regression to the mean, but even if he has like 1,800 yards and a 16 average, I mean, that hasn't been done very much in NFL history.
He's been targeted 92 times.
Yeah, that's like Mark Andrews type numbers. He gets targeted like 30 times a game.
And I get it. I'd throw the ball to him too.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't argue with picking him. I would go Jalen just because of how much he means on the field, off the field, his toughness, his grit, his consistency. He's just in so many ways he is the Eagles. I mean, he's the voice of the team. He's the face of the team, and it's hard to imagine this team without him.
Anyone else who deserves a honorable mention, offensive MVP?
I don't know. I mean, I think Lane's been really, really good.
I think Kelsey's been very good again.
Yeah, I think he got a little bit of a slow start, but he's been great. You can always put Kelsey in that mix, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Mulata had a tough first half yesterday, but he's had a really good year.
Yeah.
But I think those 2 kind of stand alone, AJ and Jalen.
I agree. All right, let's defensive MVP here. Who do you have?
I went Jalen Carter.
Wow, the rookie.
And I just think he's made such a big difference. And even when he doesn't show up in the box score, and he's going to get a sacks. He's going to get a 7, 8, whatever sacks this year, which is phenomenal for an interior rookie. But he just is such a difference maker and such a great player. I think he's been a little banged up, and he probably hasn't made the impact the last couple of weeks as he did earlier. But to me, he's the guy that if you're an offensive coordinator and you're looking at this defense, who's the one guy who you're most afraid of? I mean, I think it's Jalen Carter. And look, Reddick's come on. He's been really good. Sweat's been really good. But, I mean, there's certainly nobody in the secondary who would be in that mix. That's my guy.
Yeah, I get it. I do think there's been a drop-off, and I think it's just injury-related over the last few weeks, which is why I don't have him. I have Josh Sweat. And it's funny that neither of us picked Hassan Reddick, who leads the team in sacks. He's been so good. He's been closing games. He's been excellent. I don't want to take anything away from Hassan Reddick, but Sweat to me has been the better player. He's been more consistent. He has one less sack, but he has 6.5 sacks, 16 quarterback hits, 6 tackle for loss, 2 forced fumbles. I mean, he's been a monster this year. And it was funny talking to Jordan Mailata after the game yesterday, and Jordan's like, this guy needs to start getting recognition as one of the best edge players in the league. He hasn't had that, but he's excellent.
He is, and he's physical against the run. I mean, Reddick's I thought played better against the run, but Sweat is a big part of that run defense. And man, he had some pressures yesterday that definitely caused some incomplete passes. He's just relentless. I mean, he's a terror. 4th round pick. That's one heck of a 4th round pick right there.
And he makes plays that don't show up in the stat sheet too. Like, so the pressures even show up in the stat sheet, but there are plays where like he'll just force a running back to take a wider angle, and he prevents an 8-yard gain and turns into a 2-yard gain because of how quick he is and how his long stride. He's such a good player in everything he does. He's fun to watch. Gets better every year. We talk about Jalen Hurts getting better every year. Josh Sweat gets better every year.
Yeah, I think he might fall a little short of my prediction, 17. But I'm sticking with it. What's he got, 6.5?
6.5.
6.5 in 9 games, and he needs 10.5 in 8 games.
Him and Reddick finished so hot last year. That's not out of the question.
Yeah, you're right. They're like, not a lot of teams have a 1-2 punch like that.
Mm-hmm. All right, you want to go to
the Eagles? Certainly haven't in forever. Maybe since Reggie and Clyde. They had 2. I mean, Mike Mamula and William Fuller, but I think these guys are on a different level.
Yeah. Biggest pleasant surprise.
For me, I think it's I would probably say Jordan Davis.
Okay.
He's made a big jump from last year, and he's another guy who's kind of been banged up, and I don't think we've seen his best the last couple of weeks, but I really like where he's come from, where he's gone from where he was last year. He wasn't bad last year, especially before the injury, but I just think he's been better than I expected. He's been really solid. People were, really, hey, was this really the right pick? But I think he's played like a 1st-round pick this year.
He's been good. Just the fact that he's in 4-man fronts, like he was such a specific player last year.
Right.
He's been out there on 3rd downs, which is, he didn't get any of those reps last year. I think the injury recently has certainly hurt him. It's a hamstring too. So we talked about this week helping Jalen Hurts. This will really help Jordan Davis.
Yeah.
He's just been dealing with it. The hamstrings are tricky. They linger and linger, and you think you're over it, and then you tweak it again. So that the bye week should help him. I like that pick. I'm going to give you linebacker play from Nicholas Morrow and Zach Cunningham, and they haven't been great. I think they're still a little bit of a liability, but both of those guys are playing way better than I expected.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Cunningham's been really solid, and Morrow's had his moments. Cunningham's, I mean, he's really athletic and quick, and you see him making plays on the sideline that you don't really see Eagles linebackers in recent years make. He's got that great range. You're right. What's that?
But not great in coverage.
Not great in coverage, and we've seen that. And I mean, neither one's a great player. But considering they didn't get Cunningham, I mean, he was on the street the first couple of weeks of training camp. He wasn't even in a camp, and they cut Morrow. So they're 2 guys who, look, these are typical Howie moves, and they're not great players, and they're not elite players, but they're better than what they had at that position before they got here. And I like that pick. That's good. I did notice you left out one linebacker, though.
Nakobe?
Yeah.
He hasn't played well. Been hurt. He hasn't played well.
That was a transition to most disappointing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that your pick for most disappointing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. And look, I know he's only 22 and hard worker and all that, but I expected more from Jacoby, more consistency, more splash plays. He's had some games where he's been bad. Not just like I think earlier in the year he just wasn't really showing up, but I don't think he was playing poorly.
Well, he got hurt in week 1.
Yeah, he got hurt in week 1, but he only missed 4 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was a stretch there but I think the last couple of games he's been bad.
I agree. I don't disagree with you.
I've been really disappointed. And look, he's hurt again. We don't know how long he'll be out, but I expected more. I expected a lot more.
I was excited.
Maybe it's not fair. 3rd round pick who's 22 years old, but I mean, there was so much hype about him coming out, and why wasn't he drafted earlier? And the Eagles stole him, and he's going to wear the green dot, and he's going to play every snap. He's never coming off the field. Now he's in a rotation, and who knows by the time he gets back whether it'll still be a rotation.
Yeah, it's fair to wonder. My pick is Bradbury. We talked about him already on this podcast, so we don't need to go into it deeper. But I think he hasn't played nearly to the level he did last year, and that's a big concern.
Yeah, 2nd team All-Pro last year. He's only 30. So, I mean, just turned 30, I think, just before the season. So I didn't expect that kind of decline, but it's been pretty consistent. He just hasn't played well and at all. Doesn't have any picks. He's dropped, I think, 2. And he has some good plays. I mean, there's certainly plays that he's got really good coverage and he's knocking balls down here and there, but as a body of work, it's been shaky.
Yeah. Any honorable mentions for pleasant surprise or biggest disappointment that we missed?
How about Braden Mann as a pleasant surprise?
Yeah, he's been good recently.
He's solidified a position that has been trouble lately. So it's been good to see. It's a limited sample size, but I'd put him in there.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, last one. We did this. I don't know why we even bothered. Top rookie. Since you had him as your defensive MVP, I'm going to guess you went Jalen Carter on this one.
No, I went. I can't.
I'm watching you try to turn the wheels on this joke, and it's just not going well.
I know. Yeah, he's been really good. Can't wait to see where he goes from here. And I think the first 6 weeks of the season, he might have been the best interior lineman in the league. So
it was so funny during training camp and early in the season. All of his teammates struggle internally with how much to hype this guy up because they all saw that he was special, but he hasn't played yet. And there's you kind of want to pump the brakes typically,
sure.
But there's no hiding it that he was just a special type of player.
Yeah. And we've all been guilty of something. And I try not to, to get into the whole hype thing with rookies and training camp and, because you've seen so many of them. Once the regular season arrives, they're just not the same guy. A lot of it is a myth.
You can argue, by the way, that Nolan Smith has been a disappointment just because he hasn't gotten on the field much.
Yeah, you can certainly.
Their other first-round pick.
Yeah, that's been surprising. And I mean, Sean Desai said a month ago we got to find ways to get him more snaps, and they just haven't done it. Even with Barnett, how many snaps did Nolan get yesterday?
9.
That's actually more than he's gotten, but not much.
No, they played 75 snaps. What Sunday was it was an empty the clip. It was just go ahead and let Reddick and Josh Sweat play a ton.
Yeah,
because we have the bye week coming up. It wasn't even BG played more. It was Sweatic.
BG played 18 snaps.
Sweatic. It was Sweat and BG played 18. It was Sweat and Reddick just 80+% just out there because you're going to get the bye. Yeah,
and they've been up there really all year. Not that high, but higher than last year certainly. I think there's a few reasons for that. For whatever reason, they kept trying Derek Barnett. They finally maybe gave up on that on that project. But I mean, they're the two best by far. And look, BG had a big game, and that was good to see. I think those reps are good for him. I don't think he needs to be higher than 18 or 20, because then you wonder what he'll have left in the fourth quarter. We talked about the 1.5 sacks, but rewatching the game, the play he made on the 2-point conversion, and I don't know how. I mean, Dak was definitely aware of him. He definitely changed his angle, and when he steps out of bounds this far short of the end zone, I think it made a difference. It was so good to see BG have a game like that when they really, really needed him.
It's one of those areas too with BG where we've seen him get beat around the edge in recent years. He just doesn't have the speed anymore to set it like he used to. But that was a great play.
Do you see how hard he was running? I mean, he was hauling, and that's why. Look, he worked really, really hard to be, in the best shape possible going into his 14th year, and it paid off. Definitely paid off last night.
All right, you want to wrap this one up?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
You know what we forgot to mention yesterday was the Eagles 2017 coordinators facing the 2022 coordinators. Mm-hmm. So all the Eagles Super Bowl coordinators faced each other yesterday, which I think is pretty cool. So the Browns beat the Cards, so it's Jim Schwartz versus Gannon, and then the Colts beat the Panthers. So that was Steichen over Frank Reich. So that falls into like things only Dave and I care about, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Well, it was funny because you mentioned to me about the latter of those two, Reich against Steichen, and I was like, wait a second.
Yeah,
DC's faced off too.
Pretty cool.
A lot of Eagles coaches around the league.
A lot of them.
Yeah. All right, if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, you know what to do. Please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, click that like button, subscribe there as well. That's it. Thanks everyone for listening, for watching. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. For Rube, I'm Dave. We'll talk to you soon.